I'd like to welcome to the show, not for the first time, I'm pleased to say, David Wingfield, who's the head of marketing for the whole Absa group. And I wanted to talk to David for a number of reasons, but it's good to have you back, David. How are you?
I'm good, Gareth. Good morning.
Great to be working with you guys again on Absa's Stop to Start campaign, which we've been part of, I think, for about a year now.
Yeah, nearly a year.
I've met such interesting people and had such interesting interactions with people. Let's just give people a bit of background here about what's happened. It's about finding solutions in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence. And we will talk about all of that in a minute, but you guys have just, you haven't been sitting on your hands during lockdown, and I thought this was remarkable, and therefore I'm going to remark on it. I see the Absa Group was recently awarded the Euromoney 2020 Excellence in Leadership in Africa Award for your integrated COVID-19 response. Very well done, first of all. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, but essentially, you know, from the beginning of the pandemic and then obviously lockdown, we've spent a lot of time and resources just making sure that we commit ourselves to helping people out, primarily in three big areas. Obviously, the providing of personal protective equipment,
Right.
Education, and then also just making sure that we feed as many people, particularly young school children, as we possibly can, understanding that obviously when they weren't in school, they weren't getting fed. So we spent a lot of time and effort doing that, and that was primarily why we won the award. But also, to be honest, we've spent a lot of time, and you were talking about Stop to Start, spend a lot of time understanding and recognizing that this lockdown has been particularly hard on women, you know, through gender-based violence, and we've also been very, very, very focused on what we continue to do in that space. And obviously, August being Women's Month, we've continued to do that. So yeah, it's just been a really massive effort by everybody who works at Absa to just make sure that our response as a corporate citizen in South African society, and in fact in all the countries in which we operate, that we have helped out as much as we possibly can with all of what was required.
It is illustrative of the fact that you guys put your money where your mouth is, and you're not just giving lip service to this very important subject and to this massive problem in South Africa. The president himself called it our second pandemic. And we've done a series of activities. Some of them Absa have been doing with some other partners, but we've put together this podcast series, our weekly webinars as well. And we've covered understanding sexual and gender-based violence and sexual harassment in the workplace. And then on Thursday, we're going to focus on the role of men, a new generation of men. And if you haven't already subscribed to this important webinar series, you can find the link on cliffcentral.com. It is free to register. Come along, #StopToStart. And if you can join us live, you will find all the podcast and video information right there. Plus, of course, you can interact. So you can ask our panelists, who are going to be terrific this week. Really, we've got a stellar panel of very, very smart people we have in all of the webinars. And David, some of these conversations are not easy to have. In other words, a lot of corporates will shy away from discussing this stuff in anything but a very superficial way, because it obviously evokes a lot of emotional reaction from people. It makes people very angry. It makes people very sad. It makes people very concerned for all the right and wrong reasons. It is to your credit at Absa that you guys have decided you're not going to shy away from this. And really, while people will criticize corporate South Africa for very often trying not to get into sticky places, once more, you guys have shown that you are not afraid. And I think that is commendable. What gives you the courage to be able to do that where other people stay away?
I don't know if it's courage, Gareth. I think it's just a case of if you don't have these very honest and open conversations, I'm not really sure how we're dealing with the problem. I mean, you'll remember when we first started talking about this webinar series, you know, we were actually talking about it. I mean, the topic of the first one around gender and the workplace. It's very easy to kind of dismiss that as this gender issue is it's a classist thing, and it's a gender-based violence is what happens in poor households, and discrimination happens, and it's just absolutely not true. And if you don't start tackling it head on, how are we ever really going to deal with the problem? So both on the webinar, and the series of 4 webinars that we're working with you on, just tackle the issues head on. As part of Women's Month, we're doing it internally. We had a big we actually do call it a webinar on Workplace, which is our internal, essentially it's a Facebook platform.
Sure.
Internally, last week, with our CEO, the head of our retail and business bank, both male, our head of our people function, who happens to be female, and a very open and direct conversation about where we are in terms of gender and transformation in our workplace. And it was the numbers are put on the table. If we are getting something wrong, put it down there and have a discussion about it, and allow. And it also was a platform where we allowed our own colleagues and employees to challenge the senior leadership about what their views were. Because if you don't do that, then I'm not sure we're ever going to get past the superficial. Oh, here's the data. Okay, well, what are we doing about it?
Well, you're making it sound very pragmatic, but it is still a courageous decision. A lot of businesses, a lot of people who are at the commanding heights of businesses, trying to avoid these conversations wherever possible. And I think that they're going to be left behind in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, when we started this journey nearly a year ago, when we had, which shouldn't have been a blow up, but because this problem has been with us for so long, but late last year with gender-based violence, and in fact with xenophobic violence, in 2019, we started the campaign #Stop internally, and we partnered with He for She. We got on that bandwagon, and then it was then when we kind of looked at it and went, well, stop is all good and well around gender-based violence, but what do we do now? And we started the #StopToStart campaign. So stop doing this and start doing that, and that's where you initially got involved, where we ran that campaign with Charlie Peterson's Growing Up Without a Father Foundation, and using our Absa Premiership sponsorship to talk to young men. And it was kind of, it started a really active role in it for us, and we've just continued that. And as I said, during this pandemic and lockdown, it's just highlighted the fact that we need to carry on, and we need to do more.
Who are the heroes who've been pushing this inside? Because, in a big corporation, and Absa is one of the biggest in South Africa, there are obviously many things that you could be putting your efforts, your resources, your attention, and your time into. But there must be some people who are pushing very hard, and I think they deserve some credit for making this possible, and for having these conversations, and for actually contributing to what is probably one of South Africa's top 3 biggest social issues, if not the biggest.
I mean, I don't want to necessarily single people out, but I think it comes right from senior leadership, from our CEO, who yes, only joined us in January of this year, through our Group Exco team. I mean, there's nobody on that team who has stood back and watched the show. They are really, really actively involved. And then through we have a very good system where colleagues are able to talk and they're able to give feedback. Every business has its issues, make no mistake. But I think one thing that we've got quite good at Absa is about being open and honest with each other, and putting mechanisms in place where colleagues can feed back. And then if a topic like this and an issue like this is driven by senior leaders, starting right at the top, it becomes a lot easier to drive it through the organization, and that's what's happened. So yes, it started. We've always been conscious of it, but we really started to actively do something last year in the area of gender-based violence. And our new CEO has come in. He has championed the cause. Our head of the people function, Dr. Rose Phillips. In fact, she was on.
She was on the webinar.
On the webinar. She obviously is a big driver of this. I think it's just people not being willing to step back. They're just going, this is something we want to deal with, so let's deal with it.
Well, it's terrific, and I hope it's going to have a lasting effect, because sometimes these conversations, important as they are, don't always get to all of the places that they should get. And I think we're going to all push hard to make sure that they do. And of course, the unsung heroes of all of this are the women who put up with this day after day in South Africa, who don't necessarily have anywhere to go to. And if one such woman could hear a word of wisdom from someone on one of these webinar panels, it might just be the catalyst to a change in her life. And if one of the men, more importantly, who's doing all of this revolting gender-based violence and committing these heinous and unnecessary and ugly actions against the women of this country, if they hear it and it changes some behavior there, that would be exceptional too.
Yeah.
And of course, this is generational, right, David? I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be the kind of thing where we can say, well, we changed 1 million lives. But over time, hopefully the contribution will be enormous, because we're staking a claim in the ground here. We're saying this is enough.
Yeah, Gareth, I think the other thing I want to say, because you know, because you host your own show, you probably don't, is that I would no, I mean, from Absa's perspective, I mean, we are putting a lot of resource and time into this because it's a very important issue. But I really do want to thank yourself and your team at Cliff Central and Rena Broomberg, because this was something that you guys were also very passionate about, and it's a real partnership, this webinar series. The fact that the proceeds of us buying media space and helping you produce this is going straight back into actually dealing with this issue. It's not like Cliff Central is making money out of this. And I think that's to be commended, is that I think when corporates and people like yourselves and the media get together and genuinely say, the power that you have around broadcasting and the resources that we have, when we put this together, I think that's where we start to make a difference. And I don't think there's enough of that. It's always this commercial relationship, and I think that's what's important about what you guys are doing with us, is that it's been really, really helpful that we have someone like you and the team on board, and it allows us to take this message far and wide. And I think we need to see more of that.
Well, I think it's a sincere concern, and I don't know that there's anyone in this country who, if you sat them down and spoke to them, wouldn't know in their heart of hearts that this was something which deserved our attention, our time, our efforts, our resources, and our very authentic consideration. So I don't think it's been much of an effort for us. It's something I care about very much, and I'm glad that we could do this together. But listen, from all of the, from our team and from the fact that I've personally had such an interesting time talking to this variety of people from all over the world, and from inside and outside corporate South Africa, from places like our universities, and just the other day from people in other businesses that aren't in banking, to hear about how they're dealing with this in the workplace, in society, in our families. This is the stuff that I feel will move us forward. So a big thank you to you, and a big thank you to your team for putting the effort into this to make it worthwhile. I got to say, like, one quick shout out to Liesel, who works in your team, who's just been so hard at work behind the scenes, gathering information, doing research. It makes it so much easier for us to put together a great show. But thank you, David. Yeah. Great to speak to you.
Thanks, Gareth. Thanks to the team.
Awesome. There's that's David Wingfield, who's in charge of marketing at Absa, the group, and just giving you a little bit of background as to how this whole thing came together and how we're going to continue forging ahead. This week, register for that new webinar. And if you want to go back and see the old ones, you can find them on the Absa page on cliffcentral.com. It's called StopToStart. Really cool stuff. And the registration, by the way, is free if you want to join for this week. Great guests on there as well.